Hello friends, this is Rob back with you again, and I'd like to resume on the historic photo locations playlist. I've been covering some locations where famous photographs were taken, and I'm picking back up here with the 7-year itch. So I'm sure, like many of you, I wonder what is the exact grate that Marilyn stood upon for the 7-year itch promo. Uh, First, it's not the exact same grate. The pattern is different. The one she stood on is more of a diamond shape, the pattern running through the grate, and the contemporary one that's in use now is more like a grid. It's a north and south lines. So it's not the same physical grate, but even though it's not the same physical grate, we wondered, of all the grates that are there, which one did she stand on? So let's try to cover that now, and we'll do a little a back setup first. So this is one of the photos from the set. This is from George Zimble, and believe it or not, George Zimble is still alive. He's living in Canada. I think he's 86, about 85 or 86 years old, but he's still in Canada. And this is one of his images. He entitled it "The Flower." So let's a little backstory here. So it all occurred on the evening of 14 September of '54. Billy Wilder was in New York to shoot on Lexington Avenue in front of the Trans Lux theater, because that was part of the storyline where the Tom Yule's character and Marilyn Monroe's character, they come out of the Trans Lux. They were watching Creature from the Black Lagoon, and she walks out and she stands over the subway grate, and the air comes up through the grate and blows her dress up. So that's the premise, right? So here's where it occurred when it occurred, 14 September. According to George Zimble, he is in one of his on his website, actually, he said they started arriving at 10:30 p.m. Marilyn arrived roughly around midnight, transitioning into now the 15th of September, and he said they wrapped up about 2:30 a.m. It was just too loud. Billy Wilder was, the crowd was too loud. Many men, I've heard, I did 10 days of research on this, seriously, about 10 days of research. I've got about 60, 70 hours of research into this clip here. And the estimations the estimates are just, they swing wild. Anywhere, I've seen it as low as 500 people were there to literally as much as 5,000, and it just ranges all throughout. So you can see there's 2,000 people there, 2,500, depending on what source. Again, the minimum was 500 and the most was 5,000. But anyways, they were there and they were making a ruckus, and they were doing take after take, and they couldn't get the shot because there was just too much noise. And there was other talk about Marilyn forgetting her lines. Whether that's true or not, it's not known. But anyways, there was just too much background noise. So again, a little bit more of the backdrop. On this location here, you can see this rectangle. This is the block that we're concerned with. To the west is Park Avenue. To the east is Lexington. And this is Lexington. This is where the shoot occurred, where my the cursor is moving. Right here is where we're concerned with. It's on the southwest corner of 52nd and Lexington. So here's 52nd, here's 51st. So we got about 200 feet of storefront here. And this curb to curb is 230 feet. You allow for maybe 20 feet, 25 feet of sidewalk, and you're down to about 200, 205 feet of storefront. Okay, the hotel was demolished in 66, and they built a new hotel on the site from 67 to 69, and on that site now is 345 Park Avenue. So all this, the entire storefront where this retail area where they shot in 54, it's gone. And this is what made it a little bit difficult to actually place the exact grate, because number one, the entire storefront is gone. It was demolished in 66, and when they demolished this, I know they redid the subway grates. The positioning is off. So if I'll show you here that it looks like Tom Yule was standing on this grate and Marilyn was standing on this grate, but this is all shifted now. This is no longer accurate. So let's talk about some of the stores here that you'll see in all these photos. This was basically, now these aren't to scale, and this is just an approximation for right now. But at 586 was the Trans Lux Theater. 588 Lexington was the Beekman Wine and Liquor store. This was Floret Hats. It was the workshop of Henry Steig. He was also a silversmith. So he dabbled in some things, jewelry, men's hats, so forth and so on, costume jewelry. He was kind of like a clothier. To the right of that, to the north, was Wright's Food Restaurant, where all the photographs were taken, and then one more to the north was this store here, and this is the one I had the most difficulty locating. This was the Men's Town and Country Haberdashery. It was a men's clothing store. So again, this where my cursor is moving is 52nd, and this is 51st, and this is the retail area of Lexington Avenue. This would be Lexington, and the other side would be obviously the east side of Lexington. So I'll show you. These are the camera. These are the two rails that the trolley was riding on back and forth, and these are estimations of the crowd. This was the first area of the crowd when the camera, and I'll cover this more in detail now. The camera, the original position was about here, shooting Marilyn this way toward the Trans Lux Theater, and the crowd was a little bit. Oops, hit my mouse button. So then the police pushed the crowd back here when the camera moved right, shifted right, and they knew they had to get a better handle on the crowd, so they formed a pretty rigid straight line here, whereas before it was a loose horseshoe. Police got a control on it, and they moved them back more north on Lexington. Okay, so let's cover a little bit more of this here. So this is what's going on here. Let me explain the backstory, why I think this whole thing shifted. Okay, as a photographer myself, I think I know what happened. Again, this is speculation on my part, but I think I know what happened. And listen, where my cursor is moving, this is the camera here. This is the cameraman, and they're filming. This is Marilyn and Tom Ewell standing here on this grate. What happened is, I think the camera they're shooting in this direction, and they were getting too much backlight from the Trans Lux. And what happens is, when you get too strong of a backlight, this is what happens here. And I included this photograph to show basically what, and it's just by coincidence too, that's this, when I googled strong backlight silhouette, I actually entered that search string, and this is the image I got, and it was kind of just crazy, because this is almost the same dress that Marilyn wore in the shoot. So anyways, this is what kind of it looks like when you get a strong backlight. You get the silhouetted image, and plus it produces a halo or a rim around the body. So when this cameraman was trying to shoot Marilyn and Tom Ewell, he was probably getting a real strong halo or a rim all around the body. Okay, and the cameraman probably told Billy Wilder, "Hey, Mr. Wilder, this shoot is not working. We're getting too much of a silhouette, and we're getting a halo." So I think what happened is Mr. Wilder told everybody to shift right, shift down Lexington north to this area here. So in all the photographs you'll see of Marilyn on that evening or that early morning, you'll see this door in the background. This is an Art Deco door from the Wright's Food Restaurant. This is the door, and here it is here in this photograph right here. So I'm moving my cursor to show where the door is exactly. Okay, so here it is here. So they shifted right, and you can see the cameraman now. They're still filming in this direction. Okay, but now in the background is Floret Hats, the workshop of Henry Steig. Okay, they're not getting that strong backlight and that halo effect. Okay, so they needed to get away from this strong backlight. And that is the original reason why they shifted right and went down here to Wright's Food. Okay, so this is a look of where it is now. This is a contemporary look of how it looks today. And I'll go ahead and tell you now, I did all the math. Again, I've been working on this for 10 days, and I've done just so many mathematical calculations on it's just unbelievable. But here's what I came up with here. So this is the Men's Town and Country Clothier. Haberdashery would have been here, and then segued right next to it, adjoining it, would have been Wright's Food, and I calculated the distance at about 33 feet to the edge of Wright's Food. You allow right here, this would have been about 33 feet from the corner, this seam, right? So you allow 24 inches here as the index off of this seam. This is, Marilyn would have been standing about 24 inches inbound from this seam, which would have placed her right about here. Okay, this would have been about the 31-foot mark, and it's coming through and bisecting this grate here. So this is it's the middle grate. So this is 52nd Street here. If you look here, there are 9 grates. So it'll be the middle one. It's the 5th one in this way or the 5th one in this way. Either way, you can't go wrong because it's the middle of the 9 grates. I did all my research. I've only found two websites that claim a definitive grate. One is the New York Times. After my research, I found the Times also identified this very same, and it was a confirmation for me because I had done all the research, established this grate, and then I found that piece at the New York Times which also identified this grate as the one that Marilyn stood on. Again, now it's not the same physical grate, it's a different pattern, but it's the same location. Okay, and the only other site I found was a gentleman who's a movie buff, and he documents a lot of the movie locations in New York, and he places it here at this second one, which is, it's not possible for it to be this close to 52nd Street because it would have shifted everything, that they would have been standing out here in the street. It's just too close. So it's definitely not this one. Now if you look at the pictures here, this is where some confusion might arise, is you'll see that there's a pad here. There are three. Here's how it goes. It goes 9, 3, 8, 3. The grouping of the grates, okay, in clusters. So this is the first group, the cluster of 9. Then it'll be 3, 8, and 3. Now here I couldn't research and find all the photographs from 1954. But what I did find is I found this pad of 3 and then an indeterminate amount of pads here, but there is a gap. So what that might lead you to falsely believe is that it's the same exact pattern today. There's a 3, and then this group, Tom Ewell would have been standing here, and Marilyn would have been standing here. But that's not the way it is. The math just doesn't work out, and I'll cover that in a little bit here. Okay, so here's the building as it looks today. This is 345 Park Avenue, but this is the Lexington side. Okay, so what we're looking at, this is 52nd, and over here is 51st, and this is Lexington. Okay, this is the north, and this is the south. Now what would have happened is this would have been very roughly. Now these are going to be rough approximations, okay? They're not going to fit into these niches perfectly, but this would have been Men's Town and Country Haberdashery right here in this, roughly in this area. To the south, it would have been Wright's Food Restaurant. Okay, that would have been here. Going more south, it would have been the Floret Hats, the workshop of Henry Steig. Here. A little more south would have been the liquor store, Beekman's Liquor Store. Here. To the south of that would have been the Trans Lux, right where this big niche is here. This would have been where the Trans Lux was, very roughly, approximately. Further south was a bar. I couldn't find the name of, in all my research, I couldn't find the name of the bar. But then even south of that, there was another business called Bickford's Cafeteria, which was quite a popular cafeteria back in the day. It was Bickford, Bickford's. So that would have been here, and the address of Bickford's was 580. Now this is why I really believe Marilyn was not standing here. Okay, here's what I was talking about earlier. This is the pad of 3. Originally, you would see that it looked like Tom Ewell was standing here. Marilyn was standing here. The Trans Lux would have been here with that strong backlight, and they shifted right. So Tom's new position apparently would have been here, and Marilyn's here. But this is why it's incorrect, because it throws all the math off. And let me explain why. It would have pushed everything too far south. And let me go to the next screen. And here's what I mean. The first address for the this block of Lexington is 576. This is what starts out 576. If you go 574, it's down on this block. Bickford's was at 580. Okay, Bickford's Cafeteria was at 580, which you can see by Google's map. This is accurate. It places it not at the tip of the block, but a little bit more inward on the block. And the last address, this was 592. This was Men's Town and Country Haberdashery. Okay, so these are accurate addresses. So my point is, if we go back here, Bickford's was at 580. In the way, if it worked out that Marilyn was standing here, Bickford's absolutely would have had to been on the very corner at 580 to allow enough room for all these businesses to occupy this storefront area, right? But we can see it can't be 580. Bickford's could not have been here on the very corner. It had to be more inbound. Okay, so that's why I truly believe that these grates are not in the same pattern as they were in 1954. These grates were probably redone when they demolished the old building, the old Ambassador Hotel in '66. They probably redid this entire grading system for the subway. So let's go back here again. Okay, and this is, I just wanted to show you how it looks today. This is a grab from Google Earth, and this is 52nd, this is 51st, and then Lexington Avenue. Okay, so just to close it out here, I wanted to return to this one screen. I wanted to get away from, I didn't want to talk about Joe DiMaggio and why he stormed off the set and whether or not who filed for divorce. You know, some reports said he filed, some said she filed. There's a dispute on the number of panties she wore. She wore two panties so that she didn't show pubic hair, and then others say she wore one, she, because that's what she was trying to create a little bit of shock value for the guys there. She wore one pair. It did show pubic hair, and that's why Joe DiMaggio was furious. So these are unsubstantiated, right? So you'll find a lot of fluctuation in how many panties she wore, who filed for divorce, how many people were there. Again, I said between 500 and 5,000. So these are things that have not been firmly established. Okay, I couldn't find any of that in my research. But again, getting back to the math here, I just wanted to close it out. So if you go to Manhattan and you're on vacation and you want to stand in the exact spot that Marilyn stood for this very famous shot here where she's on the grate, it's this one here in this first cluster of 9 right off of 52nd Street. It's the middle grate. It's grate number 5. So either way you go, it's the middle grate. And again, this was also identified by the New York Times as the correct grate. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.